Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of the co-hosts, CV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Hey man, we're finally at the NBA Conference Finals, and I would say it didn't shake out to be the Final Four we probably thought it was.
Hey, yo, this is like the 7th or 8th champion in the last 8 years or something like that. It's been insane. It's been an insane run.
Definitely a change in pace in terms of the parity around the league. I actually personally enjoyed a lot more that there's a lot of these different situations going on. And I think the Eastern Conference Finals is a good representation that the regular season is not a good tale of what the postseason basketball really looks like. This Knicks team was, in a really weird spot. We were worried about Mikal Bridges' jump shot at the beginning of the season for people who don't remember. And on the other flip side of it, with the Indiana Pacers, this was a team that started out, I think, like 10-15 or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And we were just wondering how they were going to stay afloat within the Eastern Conference coming off of that long run they had the year prior. So this is definitely a representation of, a conference finals built out of just like styles makes fights, right? I think a lot of these matchups within the first couple of rounds have been a representation more so of just these teams playing to their strengths in this setting and, let the best team win. And right now, I think we probably have one of the, I want to say the most interesting Final Four that could have occurred. In a weird way,
storylines wise, like legacies being built on top of that. Like when you look at the 4 stars, I mean, with Halliburton, Brunson, Shea, and Anthony Edwards, we're gonna be creating like a new like one of these new guys like propelling to a different conversation. So
yeah,
it's definitely gonna be an interesting. It's gonna be definitely an interesting talk. We're gonna be predicting both conference finals matchups in this episode. Also, be talking about what's gonna happen next with the Denver Nuggets, who got absolutely blown out in that Game 7. We're going to definitely get into that. And Jay, bringing back the WNBA fill in the blanks, doing some predictions for the season. I'm excited for that too, man.
Yeah, man, WNBA season kicked off this past weekend, and I feel like we learned a pretty decent amount. Not too much, of course, that you can take away from one game. Most of these teams have only played one game. A handful have already played 2. But at the same time, we've seen some solid debuts. A couple of players that got to show up on their new team and show what they were made of, and a couple of situations where we can see some building blocks kind of stepping forward. So it's going to be an interesting WNBA season, and this will be the first time we're covering it front to back. So it's going to be kind of cool to kind of, see this from the very beginning and play it all the way through up through the postseason, later on in the year.
100%. And we're going to get through all of that in today's episode. So as you can see, it's going to be action-packed. Make sure you sit back, relax, and enjoy. But before we get into that talk, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best NBA content. That's where you'll find us reacting to the news, talking about the playoff series, all the good stuff, as well as the clips. So make sure you check that out. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss an episode. Also, check out the YouTube Shorts. You're going to find some of our short-form content over there. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Hey, bro, jam-packed episode.
It is a jam-packed episode. And Jay, we're not going to waste any time because we're going to be talking about conference finals previews. And we're going to start off in the East. We got the New York Knicks taking on the Indiana Pacers. A rematch of last year's semifinal matchup. A matchup that was predicted, Jay. I don't know if you've seen this, but the WWE, from months ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy how you had freaking Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton in a WWE at the same time. That's kind of insane. But Jay, it's probably the most interesting conference finals matchup because we didn't expect both of these teams to be able to make it to this point. Honestly, a lot of people thought it was going to be a foregone conclusion. It was a Celtics-Cavs. That didn't turn out to be the case. So, what are you looking forward to this matchup, and what are some things that you're looking out for?
I think obviously the point guard battle is really important, just mainly because of their play style contrast. Jalen Brunson is an embodiment of New York Knicks basketball, not just in terms of them playing physical and being aggressive, but also the fact that they play a much slower pace, right? The New York Knicks have been able to thrive best. You saw it back in that Boston Celtics series when they were able to slow things down and play at a more half-court setting space versus the Indiana Pacers with Tyrese Halliburton. They're built off of pace and space in terms of moving fast, playing in transition up and down the court, using their athleticism. And so it's going to be really interesting to see, can the Indiana Pacers, similar to what they did to the Cleveland Cavaliers, speed up the New York Knicks. We've seen in multiple series now, even dating back to last year, that when the Indiana Pacers get these other teams to play up to their speed, there's no one who can outrun the Pacers, bro. And so that's going to be a really interesting front, because the New York Knicks have kind of won off of this ability to slow down these other teams. That kind of, the Boston Celtics were getting 3-point shots up in a hurry and high possession counts and different things like that, right? So you look back at series like those and you say the Knicks have specialized in slowing teams down and playing to their level. Indiana has been really good at getting teams to pick up the pace and play to their speed. It'll be interesting to see which side gives.
No, 100%. And I think, like, the thing I'm looking most about this matchup, yes, the pace is going to be, like, the pace between both teams is going to be absolutely important. But, Jay, I don't know if this is, like, if you feel the same way, but this is giving me kind of vibes of, like, the Denver-Oklahoma series in the last one, where a lot of the conversation is going to be about the depth, because if you look at, like, how the Pacers have been able to go through this playoffs, Jay, can we find, like, who's been the number one option, their best player throughout this playoffs? Because you could probably say it's Tyrese Halliburton in that sense, but you've had massive games from Andrew Nembhard, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner. It feels like anyone on any given night could be the number one guy. But when you look on the Knicks side, a lot of their success and their offensive production does go through Jalen Brunson. I mean, he's averaging like 28 points per game in the playoffs, the number one fourth quarter scorer. So it's going to be definitely very interesting to see the conversation come back up again about the depth, being able to have multiple guys finish out games, multiple guys being able to, be on for that night.
Yeah.
And if the Pacers defense, which has been surprisingly very good throughout this entire season, including the playoffs so far, be able to counteract someone like a Jalen Brunson? Can he take him out of his element when it comes to fourth quarter situations? And if he's not doing it, can Karl Anthony Towns step up to the plate? Can, like, a Mikal Bridges step up to the plate? So I think there's, like, the dynamics of the pace between both teams, as well as being able to see who's going to be able to finish out games for both teams and see how, like, these closing lineups are going to look like. It's going to be very interesting coming from both sides.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, when you look at both of these teams, is you just have to wonder, coming into both of the coming out of both series that they emerged from, right? You look at the Indiana Pacers, and I think you can make a pretty strong argument, not just with the way that it ended, but just overall looking at the style of play throughout the series against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won pretty handily, right? Versus a New York Knicks team that had to literally, like, fight, claw, scratch just about every game except for game 6, right? In terms of not just whether win or lose, in order to make that series as competitive as it was. So you also have to wonder which team comes out of their just previous series with more to shoot for, right? Because, and what I mean by that is the Indiana Pacers are coming off riding high, right? Versus the New York Knicks are kind of, I think you can say the Knicks are in a similar situation, given the fact that they haven't made a conference finals in, quite some time now.
Yeah.
But I think it's different in the manner in which they won. That was still a series in which, if things go differently in games 1 and games 2, this, even with the injury to Jason Tatum, this series could be completely different on the other side. Versus with the Indiana Pacers, they won quite handily.
Yeah.
So that'll be an interesting factor as well, to see maybe if the battle test against the Boston Celtics actually further builds the Knicks up, versus the Indiana Pacers, who I would make an argument through the first 2 series, low-key haven't seen too much resistance just yet.
Which is weird, because they went up against Giannis Antetokounmpo in round 1, and now against the 64 win Cavs in round 2. And the fact that they've come out of there both looking like the best team out of those 3,
right,
is definitely very interesting. But I think that goes to show that this team, run very well by Rick Carlisle, has everyone engaged, and, like, I think, like, having, like, these, like, multiple options, giving, like, each of these teams different looks. And I think this is just going to be the same about the Knicks. This is why their wins are going to have to be so huge. The guard play on the Pacers side of things has been, like, the biggest story, because Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese Halliburton have been killing teams. Absolutely killing teams throughout this entire playoffs. And when you're looking at the Knicks side, yes, they're going to have to next day they have Jalen Brunson, but compared to these other 2 teams, I mean, when you think about when they faced the Bucks, not a great defensive team, especially from the guard positions. Now going against the Cavaliers, obviously you're going against that small backcourt. Jay, I think you're gonna have to put like either OG or Mikal on one of these guys all game, especially with Tyrese Halliburton, and especially him being a bigger point guard. I could see someone like Mikal Bridges like getting him as the number one assignment from minute one. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think like that's where kind of it leans in the Knicks' favor, the wing depth, the size advantage there, and I think that in order for them to really put their imprint on the series, where the Pacers have really been taking over games, playing their style of basketball, I think the Wings are gonna have to like step up in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the Boston Celtics series of before, of like, this is why they construct the roster this way, right? This is why you go after McHale and you give up four future picks, and you go after an OG Anunoby and you give him an exorbitant amount of money as well, right? You sign these guys so that you can go ahead and you have your bases covered in terms of perimeter defense, right? At least in a series like this one, specifically with Tyrese and Andrew Nembhard, the question does become, where does Pascal fit in all of that in terms of who you have guard him? Maybe that's where you have a lot more safety around the rim, where you have to trust Cat, you have to trust Mitchell Robinson to be able to protect the paint. It's going to be a real question in terms of how they decide to operate with that one, because I do feel like having a big body on Pascal is going to be huge. But the flip side of it is,
The OG, bro. That might have to be OG, especially them being former teammates and like having those battles in practice. I think that kind of like psyche advantage might have to go for OG to like be the number one priority guy in Siakam.
I think the biggest way to look at it is, I feel like OG against Siakam seems pretty straightforward. And I also feel like Mikal on Tyrese feels like a pretty straightforward setup. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Josh Hart to defend Andrew Nembhard. This could be an interesting series
Yeah.
where Andrew Nembhard might mess around and earn himself some money. Like, he might mess around. I need to double check his contract situation. I don't know if they re-upped on him just yet, or whether or not this is the summer in which like he could really be looking at like a contract extension. But if I'm not mistaken, this is one of those situations where, did he just resign? Let me see. Okay, so he signed through pretty well, so he's okay. I will say this is going to be one of those series for Andrew Nembhard, though, that is going to be similar to the breakout party that got him paid, I guess is the better way to phrase it. This is going to be one of those series that's going to be very important for him to step up as a secondary ball handler next to Tyrese Halliburton. Because, like we said, Mikal probably has the Tyrese assignment, and OG, like you mentioned in terms of their familiarity as well, probably has the Pascal assignment. Josh Hart versus Andrew Nembhard might actually be like an X Factor 1v1 that we have to keep an eye on. Personally, my rankings in terms of those are actually Josh Hart against Andrew Nembhard is number 2, but my number 1 most interesting X Factor 1v1 to watch in this series, Miles Turner versus Cat. I think that's going to be super important. And the fact that they're both stretch bigs, the fact that these two guys have been really powerful around the basket throughout this postseason, it's going to be really interesting, because so far, the Knicks have had the front court advantage in the series against both the Boston Celtics and the Pistons. Cat has had some very, very strong games, but Miles Turner has quietly had a very solid postseason of his own. It'll be interesting to see how those two guys face off.
Yeah, I think it was, and I think this was huge that him like he was basically outperforming Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the last round. I think like he, in terms of like the size, like being prepared for the New York Knicks, him being able to outform like that duo from like the last round is going to be massive, and him having a solid postseason overall is going to be huge, because that's like I mentioned, this is where the Knicks are going to have the advantage, because there's just too many guys, especially from the guard positions, that the Pacers can throw at you a lot of like of those different looks from them. The the Knicks have the advantage in terms of the wing and the front court depth. So it's going to be interesting to see if that can be able to like assert its presence in this matchup. But Jay, I'm gonna close it out with you over here. Who do you have winning this series, and in how many games?
So I'm not gonna lie, bro. I'm gonna take the Knicks. It feels weird. It feels weird.
Whoa!
I'm gonna take the Knicks. I'm gonna take the Knicks in 6 games. And I think this is a situation where the Knicks are they're just built for this, bro. Like, it just feels like everything. It feels like this Nova Knicks team from the very beginning has just been kind of built around this concept of gritty, hard nosed, fights back, plays 35 plus minutes a game, like just knows how to play good basketball, doesn't give up, watches these leads belt down, and just puts belt to ass in terms of making sure that they stay within these games. And then they have games like Game 7 where when they pop up on you, they pop up and they keep their foot down on your neck and they wait until the last 3 to 5 minutes to finally call up a Tyler Kolek to finally get some minutes on the floor, right? Like, that's when they finally decide that they want to kind of give their guys a breathing room, right? You know what I mean? So, like, this Knicks team, I feel like the biggest thing, and I hate to say this, given the two teams that the Indiana Pacers play, because I'm not trying to hate by any means, but the Pacers have played some soft squads through the first 2 rounds, dog. I ain't gonna lie. And I say soft in terms of physicality. I keep using this word throughout this postseason because on the Eastern Conference side, they just play gritty over there, dog. Like, that's always been a different contrast between the East and West, even dating back to the early 90s of, I think, the difference between the two. And I feel like this is a very early 2000s, late 90s type of series. I think the last time these two teams faced off in the ECF was 2000, if I'm not mistaken. And the Knicks just are the Knicks easily are the most. I'm gonna try to say this as well as I can. The Knicks might be the most mentally tough team left in the postseason. I genuinely believe that. I think they're the most mentally tough team left in the postseason, and I think they are just as, if not significantly more, mentally tough than any of the two matchups that the Indiana Pacers have had so far throughout this postseason. And I feel like although the Pacers have stomped some fellas out to get to this point, the Knicks are just operating on a different level right now.
This is a tough series to predict. And I will agree with you that this Knicks team is the most mentally tough, mentally prepared team compared to the first two. But I will say, the Pacers over these past two seasons, one, they beat the Knicks last year. They did beat the Knicks. It was a horrible Knicks, but they still took down the New York Knicks. These Pacers team, this isn't like the team that people like, look on paper and it's like, oh, who's the dogs on the team, this and that. These guys play physical. And I think that the Cavs from last series know that with the way that they had to like fight tooth and nail just to get to the freaking rim throughout most of that series. Jay, I'm gonna differ here. I'm gonna go with the Pacers winning this series.
Okay.
When I'm gonna go in 7. I think that we might have a situation here where, maybe the Knicks are 3-2 up, and then Tyrese Halliburton becomes the new villain over there in New York. And the thing is, like, these Pacer teams, they're willing to freaking talk back. These guys have been like talking all playoffs long. They aren't afraid of the spotlight. They're not afraid to step up to their opponent. And I think in this situation, especially with the way that Tyrese Halliburton has been embracing this whole overrated mantra since before the playoffs, and the team's kind of rallying around that. I think more than anything, they're like, okay, we have a chance to show the national stage at MSG in this environment that we belong here. I think it's just more of a way for them to like really embrace the situation. I'm gonna go with the Pacers. I also like trust the fact that I know the Knicks are the clutch team to look at, especially with Jalen Brunson. But Jay, we've seen this like Pacer team just never give up till the final whistle. They basically had two of the most improbable comebacks in these playoffs alone. When you look at Game 5, Game 5 versus the Milwaukee Bucks, and also game. I think what was it, Game 2 or Game 3 versus the Cavs, where they were down like super big with like less than a minute left, and they were able to bounce back. They've shown that they have mental toughness to the very end, which the Knicks also have shown, and I think that their consistency on the offensive end, mixed in with the depth that they have, is able to bring them over the top. Give me the Pacers in 7.
Interesting. I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing and the most interesting thing about this is going to be whose point guard plays up to the hype. We've said this multiple times on this podcast. There are times where Tyrese Halliburton, the stats don't tell the full story to just how impactful he can be. I think this is going to have to be a series where Tyrese is going to have to stat sheet stuff, though. I think Tyrese has to have a full-fledged imprint on this series in order for the Indiana Pacers to win and go to the finals. Like, I don't think this is not a series where Tyrese Halliburton could afford to have 9 shot attempt games. I just don't see it. I don't think this is one of those kind of series, and I wonder whether or not the fourth quarter heroics of Jalen Brunson, for example, can continue against an Indiana Pacers team that has been very underrated defensively all year long, as you've mentioned multiple times on this pod as well. So that's going to be the biggest thing. Jalen Brunson's ability to close games has been huge for this team all year long. It's the reason why he's the clutch player of the year, right? But the flip side of it is a fully activated Tyrese Halliburton has been one of the most dangerous players in basketball, not just in the playoffs, in basketball when he is fully activated. 9 shot attempts a game is not going to get it done, and I would hate to see a passive version of Tyrese Halliburton in any of these games for this series because that would be a detriment to what the Indiana Pacers are capable of doing as a squad. I want to see which version of each of these guys shows up, and if both show up, which one outlasts the other? Because that's a whole nother ball game.
This is gonna be a fireworks type of series, bro. In terms of just pure hoops, in terms of pure basketball, and like with these two like storied franchises dating back to the 1990s, like in their early battles, it's gonna be great to have this like determine who's gonna be the winner of the Eastern Conference. So definitely a series to watch out for. Moving over to the West, Jay, though, we got the Western Conference Finals matchup between the number one seed OKC Thunder, who got by the Denver Nuggets in Game 7, as they go up against crazy to think, crazy to say this, but like the 6-seeded Minnesota Timberwolves, who just absolutely put the brakes to the Golden State Warriors in the last series. Yeah. Two rising stars here, two of like in terms of like North American like stars, are the most like marketable in terms of Shai Alexander, who is probably going to be the MVP, Anthony Edwards. And this matchup is going to be very, very interesting. Two smaller markets, too, in OKC and Minnesota. So that should be a fun series. Jay, what are you going to be looking for in this year, in this matchup?
So I think that this matchup proved to us that the Oklahoma City Thunder are much more resilient than a lot of people wondered coming off of a season where they felt kind of like they coasted through the regular season, right? A lot of end of game fun press conferences, a lot of blowouts where Shai Alexander wasn't playing in the third quarter. But I think at the same time, a series like this puts you in the position to understand that the Oklahoma City Thunder are still a young team, but they are now much more understanding of what being battle tested looks like. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have a Minnesota Timberwolves team who we nicknamed on this podcast Anthony Edwards as the OG Slayer, right? And now he comes into another matchup against much more spry legs, I guess you can say, right? These are not some of the older teams that Anthony Edwards has kind of kicked down the stairs over the last couple of series that the Minnesota Timberwolves have won. The Thunder are on a different level. They're a much better team defensively. They have much more versatility defensively. Yes. They can hang with the Minnesota Timberwolves when it comes to big man depth, which is a huge thing in terms of how the Minnesota Timberwolves have been able to weaponize having Rudy Gobert, having Julius Randle, having Naz Reid as a 3-man big man rotation against some of these other teams they faced off against. The Thunder are much more built for that from a perimeter defender standpoint. You have Shai, you have Jalen Williams, you have Alex Caruso, you have Cason Wallace, right? You have this litany of guys that you can throw at Anthony Edwards on defense. And then from a scoring perspective, I got to be honest with you. I think the one guy I'm watching in this series more than anything, Jalen Williams, J-Dub. He is a guy who I felt like Game 7 was a huge, huge confidence-boosting game for him. But we still are looking for the J-Dub game, though, I feel like. We still are looking for that game in the postseason that says, yes, I can be the perfect Robin next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I am that secondary shot creator. I am that secondary perimeter individual on the Oklahoma City Thunder who can create, who can run the offense, who can keep things afloat when Shai is off the floor, right? And we still just have not seen a complete game from J-Dub. And I think Game 7 was a good building block for that. But I think he's going to have to have a strong series because Anthony Edwards has had his Robin. He's had his Robin and Julius Randle, and Julius Randle has fought his playoff demons this postseason. J-Dub has to be that secondary guy for the Oklahoma City Thunder because I get that depth has been a huge target, buzzword, buzz phrase in this postseason. But man, when we start getting this late into these series, and we start getting that much closer to Larry O'Brien, your top guys have to be able to perform. J-Dub has been the only guy that I feel like has been very, very wishy-washy for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Chet has not had a great postseason either, but I think he's been phenomenal defensively next to Isaiah Hartenstein. So that's kind of helped out for it. But offensively, I don't think that J-Dub has had a strong offensive postseason. And I feel like he's due. And this just might be the series that he finally takes off. It is going to be interesting to see how he does so because Minnesota's got some guys that can throw at him too. Julius, Jaden, obviously might even get some time on him. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how he shows out because he's going to have to be there. He's going to have to be there offensively for this team to be successful and go to the finals.
No, 100%, because it's interesting because we thought that J-Dub has been like the perfect Robin for Shea throughout this entire season. He's made the All-Star appearance. There's a good chance he actually makes All-NBA with the way he played throughout this regular season. And Julius Randle was one we had a lot of questions with going into these playoffs, and he's the one who's performing like an All-NBA caliber player in the playoffs so far. Jalen Williams, 2 out of the 5 games, I think 2 out of the 7 games in round 2, he was very good. But he was also very, very bad for a lot of those games. And when you look at that Game 6 loss where, you had the Thunder had a chance to close it out on the road, you can look at J-Dub's, 4 for 16 shooting night and be like, you know what, maybe like this is like where we need more of the shots being made coming from. And he has a chance to do it here. Now, like you mentioned, he's going to have a tough time dealing with Jaden McDaniels, who was one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. But this is like where he's going to have to show that he is the true Robin in the series because Shea is going to have to deal with Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. By the way, Shea versus Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 2 cousins in the series. It's going to be a great matchup there. Team Canada boys as well. So Shea's going to get a lot of the defensive
attention.
The defensive attention. Yeah. There's going to be times where even Anthony Edwards is going to be like, get out of now. He's going to do it with a smile on his face, trying to guard SGA throughout the series. So J-Dub is going to need to play huge. But Jay, another guy I think is going to be massive in the series, especially when it comes to a physicality standpoint. This is where Isaiah Hartenstein is. Like, this is where they brought him in for. This is exactly why they brought him in here for. Because as much as Chet has been a great, rim defender for them, a great shot deteriorator, matchups against Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Julius Randle, this is where you have Isaiah Hartenstein just stand at the top of the key, stare eye to eye with Rudy Gobert, and just let him throw some passes into the paint. You have him just hit that that one-handed floater that he always hits. This is where he's going to be absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the third best Thunder in the series. He's going to play such a massive role. He's going to have to fight down there where Julius Randle, Gobert, and Naz Reid is going to try and keep fighting for those, especially for the offensive rebounds. Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be huge, not just for his playmaking ability, but then he's also going to, I think, have a bigger offensive load than he has been all season, all series long. And that matchup with Rudy Gobert, because it's going to be so important because this Thunder team has not really faced that much. I mean, that much resistance when it comes to the paint. I mean, they freaking ransack ED off the court. Obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. is not the most physical defender. He's a great rim protector, but not the most physical defender. And they had to go up against Nikola Jokic in the last round with no center depth. So this is the first time we're Jay, again, physicality, massive word on this podcast, that they're going to face a real physical threat. And you've seen from series past, we've seen from playoffs past, that this Timberwolves team will wear you down. They will absolutely take the life out of you. Ask the Denver Nuggets last year. Ask the Golden State Warriors and the Lakers this playoff run. So the Timberwolves might have the physical edge, but I think the Thunder have the defense, so the Timberwolves can't have those offensive lows, which we've seen throughout the playoffs. But I think that, again, when you look at in these matchups, I say Hartenstein's going to have to be huge, especially being able to bang down there with Rudy Gobert and not being in foul trouble as often, because he was in foul trouble a lot in that Nuggets series.
Yeah, I think another thing, too, is if you look at the 2 series that the Minnesota Timberwolves have won, if you even go back to that Phoenix Suns series last season, outside of facing the Denver Nuggets, have the Timberwolves played against an offense that has the ability to potentially play offense through their center? I don't think they have. Phoenix didn't.
Yeah.
The Lakers did not this season. They had Jackson Hayes starting at the 5. Right?
Yeah.
this
Yeah, but
last
last year
series
was like
against Golden State, they had a lot of Draymond Green at the 5, but not really. He was more of an offensive initiator, but mainly from the perimeter.
yeah.
Not too much post play action has been faced by the Minnesota Timberwolves outside of the Denver Nuggets over the last 2 postseasons. It'll be interesting to see how Rudy Gobert faces off against, once again, like you mentioned before, an Oklahoma City Thunder team that not only has depth at the center position, but a multitude of different variations of what that offensive structure looks like. Right, Chet can step away
Mhm.
from the basket, but he can also finish around the basket as a a high top finisher. Isaiah Hartenstein has that little baby floater that we talked about last season that felt like it was automatic for the Knicks during last year.
Yeah,
Might have got him paid last season, right?
yeah. Along
So
with the
he has
play,
that aspect as
he's
well,
going
right?
to.
You even have a Jalen Williams at the center position who's very good in transition. Is going to force Rudy Gobert to have to get back on defense fast because he does run the floor. Like,
Yeah,
it's different variations of the center style play that the Oklahoma City Thunder have as well. And Rudy Gobert is going to have to deal with each and every version of that in order to be successful in this series versus the Timberwolves. It's a lot of small ball center with Nas Reed at the 5 when Rudy's off the floor. So it'll be interesting to see how those variations of the different style of offense work. I think it's going to be one of those things where if you are able to play, if you're able to rely on the center play, if you're Oklahoma City, if you're able to rely on consistently strong center play on the offensive side, I'm talking offensive rebounds, being able to, like Isaiah Hartenstein, shooting well clip with that baby floater, Chet Holmgren being able to put the ball on the floor and force Rudy Gobert to guard, under the basket. I think this could be a really good series for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I hate saying that because I don't want to sit here and make it sound like I'm doubting the Minnesota Timberwolves. But you've spoken about depth so much on this podcast throughout the postseason. And the Oklahoma City Thunder have shown through these first few rounds how their variations within their depth gives them the perfect chameleon type matchup against any of the teams they faced so far. And I mean, they just came off of facing the best player in the world, as far as we're concerned, at the center position. And although his upside is not defense, they were able to contain him offensively. Didn't he just shoot 9 for 20 in game 7?
yeah,
If I'm not
yeah,
mistaken, this is a
yeah.
guy who they were able to genuinely contain offensively. You're not worried about the offense of Rudy Gobert. Now, you're just now forcing him to guard just as much. So, I think this is going to be a really interesting series for Rudy Gobert. To me, numero uno X factor in the entire series between Oklahoma City and the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, excuse me, Oklahoma City and the Minnesota Timberwolves. My personal opinion is that Rudy Gobert is the biggest X factor in this series between Oklahoma City and Minnesota because his ability to guard the basket is going to be important against a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who still has not found his rhythm getting to the free throw line through this postseason. I also think it's going to be important in terms of deterring someone like Jalen Williams, who's trying to get himself going, who still has not had a strong postseason game just yet, or a collection of games just yet. And I think the easiest way to do that is obviously by getting, bunnies at the basket. And then also the center depth for Oklahoma City. Don't let them start going off because then you're screwed. Because if the inside starts going out, you forget that Casey Wallace shot 36% from 3 this year. You forget that Aaron Wiggins shot 36% plus from 3 this year. You forget that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso is having a postseason of the ages from a three-point shooting perspective right now, right? So you forget that if these guys at the center position start getting off, they also still have guys who can spray it from beyond the arc. Rudy Gobert is going to play a big factor in how OKC decides to run their offense.
Yeah, I mean, like, yes, I do think that's going to be like, that's going to be definitely like super important in terms of like the outside play, but the Thunder have shown this like obviously. I think this is like where I'm gonna like go before we get into the predictions.
Okay.
This is gonna be big time because the Thunder, yes, they shot well from the 3-point line like during the regular season, but in these
Yeah.
playoffs they've struggled heavily from the 3-point line, and that's where
True.
where like the team with the Denver Nuggets were able to take advantage like during those times. I mean, like people were scared, especially after that first quarter, after the Denver Nuggets took a 26-21 lead. The Thunder like missed like the first 8 threes, and they were able to come back in this game again through the aggressiveness and through like the inside play of Jalen Williams, throughout all those other guys. The Thunder want to live in the paint. They want to make sure that they exert their presence there, and then forcing the Timberwolves or whatever team to collapse on them to potentially get these like wide open threes. But the thing is, the threes haven't really been hitting. Ask Jalen Williams. Ask someone. I mean, like I feel like the most consistent guy this postseason for them from the 3-point line has been Alex Caruso. So it's
Yeah.
like you need the other guys to step up. And I think if the Thunder continue to struggle from the 3-point line as they did in that second round series, the Timberwolves are going to take advantage at big time because you talk about the Celtics and like the Cavs having a big 3-point volume. This Timberwolves team will spray it from deep with Anthony Edwards having one of the best 3-point shooting seasons of his career. One of the 4 or 5 guys this year to have over 300 threes made. They're gonna be willing to spray from 3, and they've gone hot multiple times during the playoffs. Ask the freaking Los Angeles Lakers where the Timberwolves hit like 20 plus threes in like multiple games. So
Yeah.
3-point shooting is going to be huge too. I think that does favor the Timberwolves, but it's going to be interesting to see if the Timberwolves are able to control the inside presence, especially with the way that the Thunder basically just live in there. But Jay, before we move on, final predictions. Conference finals matchup. Who comes out, goes to the NBA finals? Who you got? Thunder versus Timberwolves.
I'm going with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to do it in 6 games. I feel like this is a real reflection of their series last season against the Dallas Mavericks. I feel like they were 1 possession away from pushing it to game 7. I feel like this is a series now where they are much more prepared, though, for the physicality of the center rotation as compared to what they had last season against the Dallas Mavericks, right? And I feel like that's going to be one of those things that favors them in a real way. I say it. I'm predicting this right now. I believe Jalen Williams is going to average somewhere between 21 to 24 points a game in this series. And I feel like it's going to be necessary in order for them to not only just get past the Minnesota Timberwolves, but I also think it's going to be crucial if they really want to win a championship this year. I think that J-Dub is going to average 21 to 24 points in this series, imprint himself on this series finally in a postseason matchup where they desperately need him. I think he's going to be huge. I agree with you. I think this is going to be a series where Isaiah Hartenstein submits himself potentially as their 3rd best participating player in this series at least.
Yes.
And I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder get this done in 6 games and they move on to go to the NBA Finals.
Unlike the last one, Jay, I'm actually going to agree with you here. I have the Thunder winning in 6 as well. I think there's going to be some early series struggles where the Timberwolves will start to be like extra physical with the Thunder, and I think that might be like kind of like a shock to the system at that point. You know, Anthony Edwards, all those guys kind of talking their shit up, but then the Thunder, as they kind of did with the Denver Nuggets series, they kind of adapted. They're making these like little chess moves. Like if you look at the series throughout with the Denver Nuggets, it was like a mini adjustment here and there to the point where even in Game 7, they made the move to freaking put Alex Caruso on Nikola Jokic to really solidify the series over there. So they're not afraid to try different things, but I do think it's going to take some time for them to like fully get engaged in the series, especially with the very aggressive Minnesota Timberwolves team. I'm just afraid with the Timberwolves, and again, we saw it multiple times in this playoffs already, that they just kind of go in these offensive lulls and maybe become too reliant on the 3-point shot. If that starts to happen against this Thunder team, we saw what happened to the freaking Nuggets in Game 7. Once you start like getting away from your offensive game and you're not starting to hit your shots, this Thunder team will run you to death. This Thunder team will continue to use their athleticism, use their like amazing perimeter defense, and try to get at you. So Anthony Edwards, I mean, we saw that Julius Randle was able to take advantage of those like bad Anthony Edwards minutes. You can't have really those bad Anthony Edwards minutes against the OKC Thunder, because the Thunder will jump on that and pounce on that. Give me the Thunder in 6. I know that again they haven't been the best shooting team this postseason as well, but the depth is going to be huge. If adjustments need to be made, I trust the coaching acumen of Mark Daniel and the rest of his staff. And just on both sides of the floor, just like a bit more reliable on that end, to the point where I think again, I really truly believe that Isaiah Hartenstein is going to play a huge role. So can the Timberwolves be able to like maintain that effort and maintain this energy for another 7-game series? That still has yet to be found. But again, they've rested quite a few days in this, so it's going to be huge. Would I be surprised if the Timberwolves win? I actually don't. I wouldn't be like fully surprised, but I still think the Thunder they've shown from day one, and they've shown like when faced adversity they're able to bounce back. Give me the Thunder in 6 as well.
I completely agree. I think one of the main points that you touched on was one I almost forgot to kind of like press when it came to my worries about the Minnesota Timberwolves versus some of these other teams. When it comes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, Anthony Edwards having games where he starts 0 for 10, stuff like that, and he can't seem to get that shot flowing, and he's starting out the series with his first 5 out of 7 shot attempts are all, heat check threes to kind of figure out where he is in the game. Not gonna fly. Not gonna fly
Yeah.
against an Oklahoma City Thunder team that not only knows how to win basketball games in terms of getting leads, but they know how to blow folks out. They know how to leave people in the dust. So you want to be very, very careful with this shot selection. I think a guy who's quietly going to be very important for the Minnesota Timberwolves is going to be Mike Conley. And it's not necessarily going to be his ability to contribute to the offensive production. I think it's going to be the focus on slowing the game down. Similar to what we talked about with the Indiana Pacers facing off against the New York Knicks. When the Oklahoma City Thunder get up and down the floor and are able to thrive within transition, a lot of crazy stuff starts happening, and the opposing team is usually not on the good side of it. On the flip side, the Minnesota Timberwolves operate best when they can play with that physicality at the forefront of their play style, and that's going to start with slowing the game down. So I think the importance of Mike Conley to bring Anthony Edwards along and stay focused and understand that this is going to be a series that they win. TV, you touched on this so much throughout this past series of understanding the importance of how dangerous the Timberwolves are when they get to the basket. As much as they love being able to shoot that 3-ball throughout this postseason, even dating back to the regular season, just how dangerous they've been through this postseason of getting to the basket. I think the encouragement from someone like Mike Conley to say, "Ant, get to the rack," right?
Yeah.
I know you were one of the top 3-point attempt shooters in the league this year. You outpaced Stephen Curry in terms of not just 3-pointers made, but 3-point attempts per game this year. We understand that you added that part to your game. But brother, we need you to test that shot blocking of those centers down low. We need you to put guys like Isaiah Hartenstein in situations where they have to be active around the rim as rim defenders and be forced to take blocks, forced to take charges, forced to step out of position where you could do dump offs to other guys like Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert underneath the basket, right? You have to put, if you're the coach, if you are Mike Conley, if you are Julius Randle, you are looking at Anthony Edwards and you are saying, our best shot to getting to the NBA Finals is your head above the rim 85% of the time we are on offense. And that's going to be really interesting to see not only A, will Anthony Edwards heed to that, but B, how will the Oklahoma City Thunder respond given the fact that they are one of the best rim defending teams in the league because they get gang blocks from their perimeter guys who all are, very high in terms of shots contest percentage as well. Because you got guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Alex Caruso, Aaron Wiggins. These are some of the guys that in terms of perimeter play have some of the highest percentages in terms of, shot contests around the rim in the league from the perimeter positions. So it's going to be interesting to see not only how that works in terms of him testing the rim, but how these guys respond to it.
No, 100,000%. I mean, like, you talk about putting pressure on the rim. Anthony needs to continue to do that. That's where he thrives the most. This is where I think also, like, Julius Randle, you've been great all series long. Now you're facing against probably the hardest defensive assignment you're going to have, especially when you have to be guarded by Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein. So can you continue to be that interior threat that you have been doing this entire playoffs long? We want to see it happen. We've been able to see it for 2 series straight. Now do it when it's against probably one of the toughest matchup that you're going to be going up against. So those two guys need to really put on the set the tone in terms of getting the ball inside, and then that's going to allow for Julius Randle to show his playmaking acumen, Anthony Edwards to really make those nice and quick decisions, and hopefully that leads to more 3-point shots for the other guys as well to be able to get let off. So. Yeah, I mean, there's a path to victory for the Timberwolves. 100% for sure it's a path to victory. Can they fall through? Can they do it for a 7-game series? There's a chance, but again, me and Jay will both go with the Thunder. Yeah. We're going to move on to the next topic. And Jay, speaking of the Thunder, we talked about it shortly. The Thunder absolutely beat the brakes off the Nuggets in Game 7 of the second round. That last 3 minutes of Game 7, by the way, of I think it was as the first half where they went on that 18-3 run. That was the Thunder team I saw throughout the regular season. Just absolutely just putting teams in a freaking casket and just killing them right there and then. Now the Nuggets have been out. tough playoffs to go through. Obviously, Michael Porter Jr. has had his shoulder issues since round one. Aaron Gordon, grade 2 hamstring injury. I don't know how he was able to play in Game 7, but he was still the third best player on the court, which I think is a testament to how bad the other Nuggets players played. And I don't want to like put any like excuse Nikola Jokic out of this. He like was thrown different type of matchups over there with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he did not respond that well after being defended by Alex Caruso and Casey Wallace in Game 7. So I think it's just the entire team played bad. In general, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's next with this team? Obviously, they got rid of their head coach. They got rid of their GM. Who stays, who goes, obviously, and like kind of like your overall outlook on the Denver Nuggets.
I mean, you said it the entire postseason, and this team is the poster child for the problem. This team needs depth bad. And
yes,
unfortunately, their only functional way to maybe reach that would be trading Michael Porter Jr., who's coming off of a pretty rough postseason and still has $79 million left over the next 2 years. Obviously, combined, I think he's at about 34 to 35 billion over the next 2 years combined. Maybe kind of a little bit more than that, give or take. It is an increasing contract. I think he might have 35 1 year, and then somewhere around around like 38-ish or somewhere like that the next year. It's something around that number. But he's on an increasing contract over the next 2 years, about 79 M's left over, and they have a tough center rotation problem with DeAndre Jordan still being on the team. That can get made up by their first round pick from last year, who, obviously missed the entire season due to injury. He should be somebody who should hopefully be a contributor next season. But past that, I mean, cap space wise, between Gordon, Jokic, and Murray, they are and Porter, they are jammed up. Dario Saric, I believe, is coming off of their books, but that's not saying much because he's only
he was a non-factor. He was a non-factor.
Yeah, he's owed $5.4 million, and it's a player option. I wouldn't even be surprised if he maybe picks it up. Russell Westbrook is on a $3.4 million player option. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he picks his up, given the circumstances that he hasn't been able to find a consistent home just yet. If he doesn't pick it up, I mean, it'll be interesting what he looks like on the free agency market as a guy who did show up relatively well this regular season and did have some really strong games in the postseason as well.
Yeah.
But they don't have a lot of flexibility, man. I think their two main focuses has to be, do you think Adelman is the head coach of the future or not? That's number one, right? And then number two,
I think he's earned it.
I think he's earned it. I think he's earned it as well, but I would say I think you have to stamp him, right?
Yeah,
that would be number one. And number two has to be figuring out this depth some way, somehow. And unfortunately, I don't know how much they can do to get it done. They're going to have to convince some poor fool that $79 million over the next 2 years of Michael Porter Jr. is worth investing in. And I hate to call another team a fool for investing in him because he is a good player when healthy. It's just, unfortunately, he falls into that category of a lot of these guys we hand over where we say, when healthy, they're this. But they're not healthy often enough to get that version of them. So I fear that they're not going to have a strong trade market for them. If I'm not mistaken, their first round pick was supposed to be the 25th pick in the first round, and I think it belongs to the Orlando Magic now. So they don't even have that to even get a first round talent this year, if I'm not mistaken. So that puts them in a tougher position in terms of acquiring more high-level talent to add to their depth. Oh, man. This is going to be a serious second round / UDFA type team. They don't have a ton of cap space.
Yeah, no, it's a tough situation. Saving grace, you got the best player in the league. You have Nikola Jokic.
True.
They got Denver Nugget. They have Mr. Nugget and Aaron Gordon, who has proven, hurt or not, he wants to be out there, and he is going to put in his absolute heart out. You don't want to lose that. Christian Brown too. I think he's earned a part. Like at this point, that he is like the guy that you want to have as like your fourth or fifth starter. You want to have him like on this team long term. But Jay, alongside Michael Porter Jr., which that contract is atrocious, And hopefully, at this point, it might have to be a salary dub to some sort of team because they just need the cap flexibility.
Yeah.
But Jay, it's time for us to look at Jamal Murray too. It's time for us to have a real conversation about Jamal Murray because as much as he's had moments in this offseason, in this postseason, the way people view Jamal Murray, the reason they gave him his contract was, yes, him in the regular season is a borderline all-star, but we're paying him for his postseason success.
Yeah.
And now we are 2 straight postseasons through with Jamal Murray where he hasn't been super Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Besides that, maybe that Lakers series from, I think, like, was it round 1 last year where he was like freaking super Jamal Murray. Besides that, we haven't seen a real. And the thing is, this is what he's brought into himself because he gets into the regular season. He already has his own injury problems. He is just like a good 20, 21 point per game scorer. And in many cases, that's not a max contract guy. That is not someone that you want as your number 2 option. But he has elevated his play so much in the postseason that people are like, oh, he's like a top 5 postseason performer in the NBA.
Right.
That we're okay with giving him this money. But Jay, he hasn't been that the last 2 years. And whether it's injury, and I hate to put in like the whole Canada situation because he was bad for Team Canada as well. Like this has not just been on the NBA stage; this has been on an international stage as well. But if he's not giving you that, and he is, and you just gave him the freaking bag to be this number 2 option, he's at this point might be expendable because a lot of his success, and I think a lot of the death of Denver Nuggets can agree to this. Why don't you leave the system in Denver when you play with Nikola Jokic? Like, what is there to Jamal Murray? What is like his like ceiling as an NBA player? Because he clearly hasn't shown that he is a number 2 option these last 2 series. This man, I have to bring back this Game 7 stats. Yeah, here, 34 minutes, 13 points, 6 for 16 shooting.
Yeah,
just absolutely like not a great performance. A lot of those points coming in the third quarter where the game was completely out of reach. If he's not playing at this level, he becomes expendable, and his value, kind of like Michael Porter Jr. on a longer term deal, is where is his place in the league in? Who's going to be able to trade for this? For this player, he's for me just as much of a question mark. He is someone who like is paid like a number 2 player. He hasn't been playing like that the last couple of years. You might just have to keep him on just because like it's just going to be too hard to trade. But changes need to be made, and I think like having a look at Jamal Murray too needs to be talked about in this offseason.
I think it's funny that you mentioned Jamal Murray as a possible trade chip because he actually is a guy who would fit in a lot of different situations in terms of also addressing their depth problem. I'm actually looking at the conference standings right now just to get a kind of beat on who would be some teams that would be interested in Jamal Murray that can not only, give them the proper assets to fill out depth, but also just be able to absorb the contract that is Jamal Murray too, right? And a couple of teams that come to mind, I think, are the Detroit Pistons, who probably want to continue to build off of a year that they had like this one. They're going to be in a situation where they have to potentially look at re-signing a Malik Beasley, obviously build off of what hopefully will be a healthy season for Jaden Ivey. He might start the season off relatively slow, just coming back from injury. But the Detroit Pistons could be an interesting team, a team that's always in the market for a point guard that can stretch the floor, in my personal opinion, the Orlando Magic. I think they have some other teams that they could call up for a point guard. My Chicago Bulls with Kobe White is obviously one that's been talked about a lot. Anthony Simons with the Portland Trailblazers have been brought up plenty.
But those are more cost-effective. Those are more cost-effective options. Jamal Murray starting next year, it's going to be on a 4-year, $200 million deal. So whoever's trading for him is going to be like in it for the long haul.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets might be another team that might be in conversation for that as a team that could definitely send Denver center help, whether it's Nicholas Claxton, Darion Sharp. They have a couple of different situations in terms of their depth at the wing position as well, where obviously they have a handful of different kinds of guys.
Cam Johnson could be in the mix for sure.
Right, so that's another team. I would say the Brooklyn Nets, with using Cam Johnson as maybe a big salary filler within that. Maybe get Nicholas Claxton in the mix of that too, but maybe Day'Ron Sharp might have to be the center that fills in the spot. We'll see how that whole thing flips, but I think that the Brooklyn Nets, the Detroit Pistons, the Orlando Magic, and the other team I would mention if we're talking about a team in the West actually would sleeper be the Portland Trailblazers as a team that you might want to call up, where maybe, is DeAndre Ayton like the perfect fit as a backup center for this team? Like maybe not. I'm not entirely sure. but he could be Robert Williams the third. Obviously, is another real interesting conversation. But the Portland Trailblazers have real interesting depth across the back. Across the backcourt as it is, but they do not have a definitive point guard to run the show just yet. Scoot Henderson is still kind of developing into that. I don't ever think that Shaedon Sharpe is going to be a guy that you have as a number one option to run things in terms of running a game for you. So could you get could you bring in a situation where I think the contract might be too big, so obviously I don't want to
Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons. Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons for Jamal.
I think if you can get Jeremy Grant, if you can get Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons, I think the Nuggets run to Portland to come pick them up, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, I think even if you could just get Jeremy, Jeremy, Robert Williams, and let me get Delano Banton as another backcourt ball handler type, maybe. You're looking at a real interesting situation there. So those would be my 4 teams. I would have to figure out how the math works in terms of a contract for all of them. But I think it could be a really interesting situation where the Denver Nuggets could go call up a couple of teams that have some real depth either at the forward or center spots. And I would say even with Orlando, they have a really solid center rotation, but their backcourt is also slowly but surely getting pretty jammed up as well. Without a definitive guy running the offense for them, I think you could always bump Jalen Suggs to being a 2, or you could have him be a number 1 with you can have him be the point guard with a 2 guard type guy. Come over that could be more shot heavy in terms of a 3-point shooter like an Anthony Simons. Or, like I said, if you're going after a Jamal Murray in this kind of trade, you can send out a guy like Anthony Black now with a little bit more openness. You could send over Wendell Carter Jr. in a trade like that one, right? So if you send over Anthony Black, Wendell Carter Jr. and salary filler with maybe a pick down the line for a guy like Jamal Murray, now you get a stretch guy who can start up the offense for you on the perimeter. Doesn't have to be a number 1, doesn't even have to be a number 2 really for this Orlando Magic team. And then you have Jalen Suggs as a primary defender next to him, very KCP-esque. Oh, not to mention KCP is on that team.
You can bring back KCP, bring him back.
Yeah, you could always bring KCP back in the trade if you wanted to do it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting functionality towards that. I'll definitely try to see if I can build a trade out of that for a future episode or something. But
I like the Magic. Yeah. I like that Magic option as a potential thing, because you can also have Jonathan Isaac if you want to address more of those wing/big options.
Yeah,
you can maybe get I don't know how much they still believe in Anthony Black, but maybe he could be, someone that you can potentially get as a young prospect at least, maybe to trade down the line if you're done for 2. There's options there, and I actually kind of like that situation for Jamal as well, not having to. He's going to be their primary guard. He'd be their primary guard shot creator, but he still has 2 other guys that he can get the ball to and actually get buckets for them.
Yeah, I think my top 3 options if they were to trade Jamal Murray would be Orlando number 1, Brooklyn number 2, and I think I would actually put Portland at number 3 in terms of what they have to give the Nuggets in return in terms of not only just salary filler, but specifically that center position. So those will probably be my 3 main teams, but it's interesting that you even throw Jamal Murray's name out there because I think a lot of people will be hesitant to speak on him as a real trade chip given the fact that there's already so much dysfunctionality with the Denver Nuggets front office, the coaching situation still being up in the air, even if we do think Adelman is the guy long term. Then to take away Jokic's running mate from the backcourt, that would be really, really interesting to do given the fact that we've seen real contributors from the Nuggets leave year after year after year. We saw Bruce Brown, then we saw KCP. Then you talk about this next upcoming season, possibly seeing Michael Porter Jr. and or Jamal Murray going out the door next. This team, we talked about it a few years ago when Bruce Brown was the first, domino to fall. It just feels like this team is slowly deteriorating around Nikola Jokic, and you just have to ask yourself, how much longer are they going to be able to stay within this upper echelon portion of the Western Conference when it seems like they're only regressing and some of these other teams are clearly getting better, a la the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just met or now in the Western Conference Finals.
That's the theme of the Western Conference. You either move with the times or you get left behind. As the Golden State Warriors, because they're going to feel the same effect in the next couple of years as well. So if the Denver Nuggets want to take advantage of Nikola Jokic years, if if they want to stay relevant in the West, they're going to have to make some moves, and they're going to have to make some tough decisions eventually. And if you're going to be a top team in the West, you're going to have to make those tough decisions whether you like it or not. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Denver Nuggets do. Let us know down below what you guys think. What moves need to be made? Who stays? Who goes? Who should be on the trading block? Some maybe potential targets that they can go after. So we want to hear all your thoughts about it down below. And also, just so your thoughts on your predictions for the two conference final series, of course, from the West and the East. We gave our thoughts, we gave our predictions. We want to hear yours for those as well. Jay, moving away from the NBA talk, Jay, we're back in it, baby. We're back talking WNBA. Opening weekend just started. Lots of stuff to talk about. Jay, your Washington Mystics are 2-0 to start the year. After, by the way, remember last season, Jay? 0-12 to start the year. 0-12. So the fact that they started 2-0 with Sonia Citron and Kiki Iriafen, like starting off the way they are, you must be good feeling as at least a Washington Mystics fan.
Yeah, man, we're in a really good spot. Me and TV were actually talking about this before we hopped on the podcast. We're in a really good space starting off the season with the 2-0 start. Obviously, not the greatest competition to kick things off, but we're not going to talk about that. That's not important, right? The biggest thing is that we've been able to get to this start with seeing our two rookies that are healthy in a really good position, both playing really well to kick the game off. Brittany Sykes has also been a huge contributor as the veteran presence in the room at the guard position.
Yeah.
And we've done this without Aaliyah Edwards, who had a strong rookie year last year, even touching the floor in the regular season just yet.
Yeah.
And Shakira Austin, who is playing on relatively a minutes restriction, as it seems like they're kind of trying to ease her back in after having a pretty injury-riddled year last season. So looking good right now for the Washington Mystics. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I have to say, so far, so good.
It's been definitely very good. And Jay, there's a lot to talk about with the WNBA. And I think we're going to bring back a segment that we did for the NBA just a couple weeks ago and bring it over to the WNBA. Yeah. We're going to do some WNBA fill in the blanks. We're going to be going through different topics. And Jay, we're going to go back and forth and trying to fill in these blanks, whether with players, with teams, whatever you want, and see like kind of how we see the outlook of the WNBA season going. Do basically a little bit of a predictions type of thing as well. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
I'm excited to talk about this, man. It's going to be a good season. It's going to be a good season. And we're going to start off, Jay, with a very interesting one.
Okay.
This year's dark horse WNBA contender is blank.
Okay, so my dark horse contender is a team that I feel like didn't do too much this offseason, but did just enough to make me believe in them in a real way. I think the LA Sparks are going to go from worst to being legitimately in the playoff mix. I think this is a team that the Kelsey Plum acquisition is not going to go unheard. She has already came out swinging in her first two games. They are 1-1, but had a very strong opening game debuting in, the LA Sparks uniform. And I think that they are going to be in a really interesting situation because De'Erica Hamby has already had a good start. She's one of the better bigs in the league so far. This combination with Kelsey Plum and De'Erica Hamby reuniting from their old Las Vegas Aces days, right? As a really strong combination off the bench once upon a time. Now they are both a part of a starting lineup that is very effective. Azura Stevens has been a very good forward next to Hamby through these first few games. I have real belief in Rickea Jackson as a sophomore to have a good season once again as an offensive contributor. And I'm going to throw this out here. I'm just going to throw this out here. I genuinely believe that when Cameron Brink comes back, that will be when this team truly propels into the
need an anchor.
I think they're capable of.
They need an anchor there, bro. They need an anchor.
Yes, I think that they genuinely need a legitimate anchor to hold the defense down, but I also believe that this team could play insanely big with Cameron Brink, De'Erica Hamby, Azura Stevens, Rickea Jackson, and Kelsey Plum as a starting five. With Mercedes Russell coming off the bench, I think Odyssey Sims as a steady hand point guard as well to kind of keep things afloat off the bench. Like they have a really strong seven-man rotation with Cameron Brink in the mix. With Cameron Brink in the mix as a big time shot, defender, big time rim defender. I think this is a team that desperately just needed. I think we said this too when we first talked about the Kelsey Plum trade.
They just need guard play.
they just needed maybe not even elite. I think they got an elite guard,
We got a
but
leak.
I think they needed a real big time shot creating guard to just give them a player to legitimately play through on the perimeter. I think trying to give the ball to Rakia Jackson on that level early and often was maybe a little too fast, and I think she still did well within what she was asked to do, but I think it was a lot on her plate at one time. I think obviously playing through De'Erica Hamby a lot of last season was really strong for her in terms of her having a breakout year coming off of a year removed from basketball the season prior, right? But I think they just needed somebody who was dynamic enough to be able to play. You gotta be able to have perimeter guard play in this league to thrive in a real way. And I think Kelsey Plum was that acquisition. So they're my dark horse team. I don't know if it's like to win the chip or anything like that, because I feel like that's just an insane jump.
Yeah.
But I think to go from the worst team in the league record-wise to being this squad that legitimately makes noise in the postseason, I think this is a team that could get a first round win. That's how strongly I feel about this team, especially if they get Cameron Brink back.
100%. I was thinking of that team. When I came up with this phone to blank and thinking of some of those teams, I was definitely thinking the Sparks. I just wasn't sure how long we had to wait for Cameron Brink. Hopefully she comes back soon because they definitely needed the defensive presence inside. Because this might be a hot take or not, I really do think Kelsey Plum's gonna have a top 4 MVP season. I think he's going to have a top 4 year this year, especially playing alongside this LA Sparks team, finding some new life after the Aces tenure ended. I really think he's going to have a top 4 season, probably be a top 4 MVP candidate. So definitely look out for that. Jay, my dark horse contender team, and I like the way that they really came out the gate as well as with their 2 new additions. The Phoenix Mercury. Give me the Phoenix Mercury over here. Dude, your girl Satu Sabali came out the season swinging 27-point performance. Remember, just a couple years ago, she was an all WNBA. She was like a top 5 MVP candidate, and she was riddled with injuries last year. So a bounce back year for her as well, and then especially adding Alyssa Thomas, and they got this win, although. Not against the greatest competition, but they got this win without Kalia Cooper, who hasn't stepped on the floor just yet this season. So if you get that guard play from Kalia Cooper with Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali having already such great games there, I'm a bit worried for their depth, but I do think they have a lot of talent up top to kind of make up for it. But this Phoenix Mercury team, if you can get a better version of Satu after the injury, and you can still get top 5 MVP play from Alyssa Thomas, they're a team to look out for. And I think this team has really had a real influx of talent from the offseason. We talked about them earlier on as a team that really kind of changed their roster heavily, especially with adding these 2 new players. And I think they're gonna really give them give the rest of the league a run for their money.
Yeah, I think the shot creation from Satu is so big because this was a team in the Phoenix Mercury that had real veteran presence last year, with Kalia Copper being your young, spry offensive creator, right?
Yeah.
But they still had Brittany Griner, they still had Diana Taurasi, but they just didn't have too much pop offensively. And because of that, they were middle of the pack. Besides Kalia, they didn't have too much pop offensively. I think Satu gives them a completely different element. And you pair that with bringing in Alyssa Thomas as well, and now you have this steady hand at the point guard position still, similar to what you had with Diana. Well, I think when you get Kalia Copper back, now you position yourself to have that offensive shot generator on the perimeter that's very downhill, very good at getting to the basket, very good at getting to the free throw line, and then you have somebody in Satu who can create as a perimeter player, shoots the 3 at a good clip. And I think a lot of people sleep on her part of the acquisition. On her part of the acquisition this summer because of the fact that she was so injury riddled last year. But it's like you said beforehand, this is an all WNBA caliber player when healthy. I think she's on a mission not only to prove that she's capable of being that kind of player, but I think also another part of this is proving that she can play winning basketball. A lot of the time over the last 2 to 3 seasons with the Dallas Wings, they have just been that scrappy team you don't want to run into. Right? When they were that postseason team 2 years ago, and then last year, they were bottom of the barrel in terms of teams amongst the WNBA, right there with the LA Sparks, right? So she has not played necessarily competitive deep into the postseason basketball as a member of the Dallas Wings like that. I think the Phoenix Mercury obviously have higher expectations than that, mainly with an Alyssa Thomas and a Kalia Copper at the forefront of that. So it's going to be big in terms of her addition as an offensive engine for this team because they just really need it, bro. I think they need it in order to be an effective team this year. And I think the other thing too is I think that the Mercury are a team that last year felt like they were this kind of wing shot creator away from being a lot scarier than they were. And I think we talked about that in the opening round of the postseason last year, that they felt like they just didn't have enough offense to get them over that hump. I feel like a much more spry point guard in Alyssa Thomas compared to Diana at the time, and a better, shot creator at the wing position in Satu it seemed like they addressed their exact needs this offseason. The biggest question to me is just going to be that center spot.
Yeah. I mean, Kalani Brown, I think she could be a good backup. I don't know about starting center role for her. And just honestly, outside the top three, just trying to find more offensive creation, it's going to be a bit of an issue. But when Kalia comes back, those it's hard to find a top three that's they're going to be right in the mix with the best big threes in the league. So I think that's a good starting point. Maybe there's some moves to be made throughout the season, but I think that's a good starting point. And I think with Sati starting off super strong, Alyssa Thomas just picking off right where she left off, it's a good start for them. Jay, next fill in the blank though. The best offseason acquisition for this season will be blank.
I feel like we talked about the two better ones being obviously Kelsey Plum with the LA Sparks and then Satu Sabally personally for me with Phoenix. So because we already talked about those, the one that I'm going to give just so it gets a lot of press now, or at least somebody acknowledges it early, is I think the trade for Natasha Cloud for the defending champs is going to be one of the more sneaky, impactful acquisitions of the offseason, especially with the fact that Bettina Laney Hamilton, one of their big-time perimeter scorers last season, is going to be out probably the entire year with a left knee injury she suffered during the time with when she played for Unrivaled. So I think getting a player like Natasha Cloud, who had a very strong opener to the season,
one of the best season opener games. Yeah, she was great.
Yeah, gives them that same, similar offensive pop at the perimeter spot next to Sabrina, but also gives them a certain level of defensive grit on that side. Very veteran presence in terms of a player that knows how to play within a winning structure. She's going to be one of those players that, although she's not the quote-unquote big names of the Kelsey Plum acquisition or Jewel Lloyd when maybe she gets her feet set with the Vegas Aces, or as we were mentioning beforehand with what Satu's might be able to do, or shoot, even DeWanna Bonner with Indiana, who had a pretty slow start in her opening game with Indiana, but I think is going to slowly but surely kind of find her footing as well. I think Natasha Cloud is going to be a player that sneaky ends up being super impactful for New York. And I think she ends up being a big part of why they have a real chance to repeat too.
Bro, this team looks even better than they did last year in that first game. Again, this is against no slouch of a team in the Las Vegas Aces, where Asia Wilson just continued to have a dominant performance. But this team up and down the roster, and having Natasha Cloud have such a great start to that season, man, looking like a great pickup, especially because they lost their veteran point guard and Courtney Vandersloot to the for her going back to the Chicago Sky. So having such a big impact debut like that for Natasha Cloud is very big. But Jay, honestly, I thought you were gonna take mine because when you said Natasha, I thought that we were gonna be on the same wavelength here. But I went with Natasha Howard, Jay.
Oh, okay.
I think Natasha Howard for the Fever. Yes, they're still gonna have their defensive struggles. I mean, you have obviously Kaylin Clark. You got Kelsey Mitchell, who are one of the best offensive backcourts. Aaliyah Boston, multiple-time All-Star. And they did bring in DeWanna Bonner. And I think that was the big focus of the offseason, them getting DeWanna Bonner.
Yeah.
But Natasha Howard is so important here because they don't have that defensive acumen on that team yet. And you kind of saw it with the energy of Caitlin Clark when she gave that hard foul to Angel Reese. She's giving them that sort of dog in their team. Maybe they still might not be the best defensive team in the league, but I feel like they're gonna bring the energy that Natasha Howard brings to the rest of the team, and at least give a bit more effort on that end. And I think like, she had a great start to the year. Obviously, a former Defensive Player of the Year player herself, multiple time champion. She just knows what, and I think this is like the big part of like the off season of the Indiana Fever. Like, okay, we have a bunch of young talent here. We just need to get the guys who know how to get it done, who know how to win championships. And it's hard to find someone as good as Natasha Cloud, who's been a 3-time WNBA champion as well. So her having a great start to the year, having that again. I remember her starting her career out with the Indiana Fever, funnily enough, but like bringing that effort, bringing that like the defensive prowess that this team like sorely needs at the time is absolutely huge. And I think again another huge veteran presence that they're able to bring in that's going to be absolutely like massive for them if they want to make a deep playoff run.
I think you mentioned it. The veteran presence and the overall contribution they're going to be able to get from not only Natasha Howard but DeWanna Bonner. I think the whole point of this offseason was to instill a more defensive minded identity to this team. I think they know that Aaliyah Boston is a good scorer around the basket. I think they obviously are more than familiar with what Caitlin Clark is able to do as a perimeter shot creator. And let's not even talk about the fact, we mentioned this toward the back half of the season. There was a point where toward the last maybe 12 to 15 games of the regular season last year, you can make an argument that Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell were looking like the best backcourt in basketball.
They definitely were. 100%.
Right? So from an offensive perspective, it seemed like they kind of had an understanding of what they did best, but they just didn't have the like you said, the defensive edge, right? To feel like they were going to be able to they're going to be a team that could truly compete with the Vegases, the Minnesotas, the I would even say maybe this version of Phoenix last year would have been a very good matchup against them. Obviously, last year's version of the Connecticut Sun was a staple of like the defensive physicality against Indiana. Let's talk about the 3 to 4 different matchups that they had against Indiana last year, wherein 2 to 3 of them, the Connecticut Sun just straight up stifled Indiana when it came to what they were able to do offensively. I think a lot of that was like, we need some of that. We need some of that grit. Obviously, part of that is taken away from the enemy, right? One of the biggest, the biggest defenders, one of the better defenders throughout last season on Caitlin Clark was DeWanna Bonner. I mean, obviously there was other matchups within that as well that,
for sure,
obviously played into that as well. But I think the main thing, dude, is this Indiana Fever team ain't going out like no hoe this year. I genuinely believe that this team, they made the off-season acquisitions that they made this year because it might be one of the weirdest one-season turnarounds we've seen in a while, NBA or WNBA. I think this team thinks they might even be like one more move away from a chip like already.
No, 100%. And like, man, that defensive edge, bringing all these like veterans. Like we didn't even talk about Cindy Colson, who they brought in. They brought in Brianna Turner, who was another former All Defensive player. They're just getting guys like, I mean, when you have such a young star, Caitlin Clark, and you had her getting pushed around a lot by like a lot of like welcome to the WNBA sort of moments for her.
Yeah.
Like in this first season. You need girls to defend her, bro. And they brought in just a bunch of just like hard-bodied these guys to kind of like just come in and just set the tone. Yes. And you can tell like that was just kind of like the theme of the offseason. And if you can score freaking 92 points a game with Caitlin Clark and of course Kelsey Mitchell at running it with Aaliyah Boston at the center position, already having a very good big three on their own, and just having all these guys just fill in their roles. You have Natasha Howard, DeWanna Bonner, and just all these like newer veterans just coming in. A lot of great offseason moves, but I think that like that Natasha Howard one, especially if she could like really provide in that small forward position, is gonna be like this move is gonna prove dividends like as the season goes on, and you're gonna notice even more of her effect when the playoffs start.
I feel that, bro. I feel like that's gonna be again dark horse name of players that may not get brought up a whole lot when we talked about the acquisitions from the summer. That when we get later into the postseason, their names are gonna become that much more important.
Okay, next fill in the blank, Jay. This might be quick. This might be not. Blank will win the WNBA Rookie of the Year.
I think it's Paige's to lose, bro. I think it's very similar to last season when we talked about Caitlin Clark in terms of not just the popularity factor, but I feel like she had her welcome to the NBA moment. I don't think it's a surprise that similar. Last year, Caitlin Clark opened up the season against the Connecticut Sun who happened to finish the year as the second best defensive team in the league in terms of points per game, opponents' points per game. The Dallas Wings opened up their season against the Minnesota Lynx, who finished as drum roll, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's unfair to freaking Paige. You have to feed her Nephesia in that performance. Like, come on now.
I mean, drum roll, please. The Minnesota Lynx literally finished top 3 in opponents' points per game just last season.
Yeah.
The Connecticut Sun were a top 2, top 3 defense in terms of opponents' points per game and defensive rating just last season when they faced off against Caitlin Clark in the opener. They had their welcome to the WNBA moment. And we saw how Caitlin Clark continued to fight through that and continue to grow within the offense for an Indiana Fever team that ended up later on outplaying expectations. I don't know how good the Dallas Wings will be as a team, but I think Paige is slowly but surely going to understand how the game goes, and I think she's a player that I think is going to grow across this time frame, and I think she's going to be good. Now, don't sleep on my girls out in Washington. I'm just saying, because both of them are going to get lots of PT. And I think they've both already set a good tone for what they think is going to be a competitive Rookie of the Year race. But I think it is Paige's to lose. My heart is going to go with Kiki Iriafen. My head, though, says that it's Paige's to lose.
Yeah, no, I think this is 100% Paige's to lose. Again, you put obviously you want to get one of your new faces of the league. You want someone to like really get like that national TV stage. So of course you put her against the runner-ups for the WNBA championship, and versus Napheesa Collier, who is just picking up exactly where she left off, just as dominant. But I do think as the season progresses, as you saw with Caitlin Clark, Paige is just going to continue to be better. The offense is going to run through her. And she's just going to be more comfortable with the WNBA space as the season continues to go on. But just like you, man, I'm keeping my eye on Sonia Citron. Just her composure already earlier on in her WNBA career. That duel between her and Kiki Iriafen is going to lead Washington for the next 5 to 10 years. Hopefully, I mean, we talked about in the offseason how like these how keeping team longevity is like super hard in the WNBA. But if they're able to like continue to grow as a team with these two at the helm. And we're not even talking about Georgia Amor, who was a first round pick again for the Mystics, who's going to be out for the season with a torn ACL. But it should be Pages to lose, but like you mentioned, those Washington girls over there, man, you need to keep an eye on them, because if they continue to shock people, maybe like, especially like if you're in a situation where Washington, who looked like they were going to be the second worst team in the league potentially next to the Connecticut Sun, maybe shock a lot of teams, maybe get into like that, edge of the playoff mix, maybe even makes the playoffs for all we know. You're going to have to look at those two girls over there saying maybe they deserve a bit more love, especially if they have like, they're providing like more of a winning impact compared to Dallas Wings, who might take a while for things to get going. Because you got to remember, not only did they bring in Paige Beckers, they made a big trade to bring in Dejanay Carrington as well. So that's going to be like just a big, not like roster overhaul for their team overall, like for the Dallas Wings. So it depends on like the surprise factor with the Washington Mystics, but I'm going to still say that Paige Beckers wins. And I think like she's just going to continue to improve as the season goes on.
Totally agree.
Moving on to the next fill in the blank, Jay, we have 2 more left here. Blank will be this year's MVP.
Y'all know my answer, bro. Y'all listened to the podcast all last year. Y'all know who I think deserved it last year, and I'm going with her to win it this year. Napheesa Collier deserves not only to win it, I think that this one is a lock this time. I think she's going to lock this Joker down. I don't think the Aces are going to be nearly as good this season. I think that New York obviously has too much sugar to spread around in terms of players that could potentially take it away from her. Some of the other interesting players that might be in the mix obviously will be like a Caitlin Clark. I do think that Satu will have to be heard from with Phoenix, but I think Napheesa is just too damn good. And as far as I'm concerned, she should have won it last year. Everyone who says that, Asia should have won it last year or Asia winning it last year was deservedly so. I will say she deserved to win. I just also believe that Napheesa had one of the strongest second place / should have maybe been co-MVP kind of discussions that we've had in quite a long time. My personal opinion is I think she gets the job done this year. I think she showed an unrivaled that she's coming into this season not playing any games and not wasting any time. And our first 2 games have shown that she is quite indeed picking up where she left off.
Bro, I was gonna say, like, I mean, we talked about it earlier when that first game with Paige Beckers, man. You give her the freaking, like, especially the team with the most, like, edge coming into this season, especially with the way game five ended with the New York Liberty last year. You already know they're feeling some sort of way after that ending. So having Deficia Collier just absolutely go out and torch the Dallas Lynx was kind of expected, not gonna lie. But at the same time, like, she looks like she's in, like, prime MVP form. I will go with Asia Wilson though, but it's like one of those things where it's like, yes, you can make the argument for Caitlin Clark. Yes, you can make the argument for Deficia Collier, who's going to be right there. I will say, I was very close to picking Deficia this year. I was going to be on the bandwagon since the beginning. But sometimes, man, you got to look at the best player in the league, look at their body of work. I mean, like, yes, they lost to the defending champions, but still a 31-16 performance, Jay. Just casually going about her day. I am worried about the Aces. That's like a bit of a worry like myself. Roster fit, man. Roster fit's going to be very interesting with the team, especially like now that they got rid of Kelsey Plum, trying to include Jewel Lloyd into the mix and stuff like that. That's going to take some time. But Asia Wilson's Asia Wilson. That's all I'm going to be basically saying. And she's going to just continue to dominate game in, game out. And if the Aces are still a top 2, top 3 seed, maybe if the Lynx are like so good at the number 1 spot that they like have that gap, maybe there's a chance there. And I think there could be a spot open for that. But if the Aces are still going to be a top 2 team, Asia Wilson's still doing this. I find it hard to believe that it's not going to be Asia again this year. She's just, bro, she's so damn good at this, and like it's hard to like see a world where she doesn't win it again.
TV, it sounds like you're talking about a very similar MVP race that is going to be concluding very soon. And all I'm saying is that depending on how that MVP race closes out, it will give you all the evidence that you need to know. Because as far as I'm concerned, last year we had a very strong conversation about SGA versus Nikola Jokic. And we had a very, very hot debate, multiple episodes even, of which one was more deserving, best player in the world versus the guy that might be having the best season and having a real debate after what happened.
SGA? I mean, we both agreed at the end it was SGA, though. Like, yeah.
And as I say, depending on how this year cracks out, if SGA indeed does win the MVP, coming off of last year where it was just a week close, I don't know, man. I look at a year where this one could be just very, very similar in the W, with Deficia Collier finally getting over that hump, and I think submitting herself as a player that we have to really consider as one of the best players. Not just one of the best players, the best player in the league, on both sides of the ball. Like I said, I say it very tongue in cheek, but I also do think that the Nikola Jokic versus Shai Gilgeous-Alexander battle of last year bleeding into this season in terms of MVP, I think it's very, very reminiscent when you look at what's going on with Deficia Collier and Asia Wilson in the W. I think that again,
the timelines like kind of match. Not gonna lie.
I personally think that if SGA wins the MVP this year, it will be a very strong indication of things to come in terms of how I think those similar storylines could play out. I think Deficia is on a very similar feat of being able to do the same thing. And I think it's very telling that the way you describe that, best player in the world, if they just finish within the top 3, top 4, but what if the other team ends up with a better record? You know, it's one of those things where you go bar for bar, you say to yourself, damn, did you just tell us that SGA is definitely the MVP of the NBA? And then I would look at you and say, well, damn, doesn't that mean that Deficia Collier probably might end up being MVP this year? I guess only time will tell, bro. I guess only time will tell.
You didn't have to call me out like that, bro. You didn't have to do it like that. It's okay, no. It's gonna be a damn good race. I like how last year's race was pretty damn good. I know it was like, did it end up being a unanimous? Do you remember if last year ended up being a unanimous MVP for Asia?
I think last year, I don't remember if it was unanimous. I think the only person who won unanimously was Caitlin, right? I can look it up real quick.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to see like if it was like unanimous, because I know.
It was last year.
Yeah, she was unanimous. Yeah, I mean, like, I see what you mean. Asia's still the best player. I'm gonna rock with her. again, like she makes everything so effortless, man. It just like it feels like it's just like one of those things. But I mean, I did make the argument that the Aces have to be in the same position. Hey, look, hey, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm still gonna go with Asia. It feels just like last year where I was in the Asia bandwagon. You were in the Fisher Collier. It's gonna have to be probably something like that, very similar this year. But Jay, to end up the pod, final fill in the blanks. I think this is a great way to end it here. WNBA Finals matchup. Blank versus blank in the NBA Finals matchup, and then blank games.
Man, oh man. I'm gonna keep it a bean. Wow. This might be bold because it just does not happen, but the W is a little bit different than the NBA. I think we run it back with Minnesota getting the dub this time. I think we run it back against New York. Minnesota, I think, gets it done. Oh, man. Do I have it going 5? I have it going 5 again. And I think that they get the dub this time.
Tough, man. Jay, I think we're kind of on the same wavelength here. I also have New York Liberty taking on the Minnesota Lynx. Both teams have looked so good to start off the year. They look like they're just picking off exactly where they left off. I feel like those are the two teams with the least amount of question marks with like how the team is set up. You just gotta hope that Kayla McBride comes back for the Lynx soon. But either way, I mean, Courtney Williams and Nafisha Collier have been so good to start off the year that like even if like I know like Kayla McBride is taking some personal time off, take whatever time you need, girl. But at the same time, like if she's like back in the mix, of course you know how dangerous this team is, especially one of the best shooters in the league. Okay. But I do think this team run it back. Do I think that the Liberty are gonna repeat? Just for the sake of it, I'm gonna say Liberty repeat, and we're gonna be another 5 games. This is gonna be like a nice mini little rivalry that we're gonna see over the next like this like modern day rivalry. Give me Liberty, give me Lynx. I think the Liberty get it done once again in 5 games.
TV, I am gonna be that guy on the podcast though, and I'm gonna say this. This is Crystal Ball Jalen WNBA edition. Kick it in. I don't know how many times we'll do this. Maybe this ends up becoming something we do down the line as a repeat on the pod. My crystal ball prediction in the WNBA is that I do think the Indiana Fever are going to make one more move. And I am calling it right now that the Indiana Fever are going to be 1 game away from making the WNBA Finals this season.
I think they're going to be damn close. I really think they're going to be damn close.
I think this team is going to make one more move before the WNBA trade deadline, and I think that they are going to be legitimately 1 game away from the WNBA Finals. I think they're just going to fall short, but I think they're going to be 1 game away from the WNBA Finals. And I think that that's going to be that thing that really sets them off where next year they become that team that we start having a conversation about potentially being a team to beat.
No, honestly, bro. Like, I mean, like, I said that my thing was, like, I said, like, one of my bold predictions this year is that Kelsey Plum's going to be a top 4 MVP candidate. I honestly think that her and Kayla are going to be 3 and 4, like, right there. They're going to be right there. I know it's going to be tough to dethrone, like, the 2 girls we mentioned, like, aforementioned, you know, Nafisha Collier and Asia Wilson. But I think we're just on the brink with those 2 right there, especially with how great of a season they have, like, coming up this year. Obviously, freaking Kaylin just messed around in the first game of the season, got a triple-double, just, like, no problem right there. But, man, I think this favorite team, I think, is actually going to be legit. But I do think we're going to run it back this year. I think it's going to be another great matchup. I do think that the Fever are 1 year away still from fully figuring things out. But it's going to be another great season, Jay. Those are our fill in the blanks. Let us know what you guys think down below. We want to hear your WNBA Finals matchups. We want to hear your fill in the blanks for all of these questions down below. We want to hear you talk about all of that. Jay, another end of a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Bro, I'm so glad that we are locked in. The conference finals, having a great time understanding that this isn't what we expected. And that's what makes it fun.
It's so good, bro. I'm so excited for this.
A different champion for the 6th or 7th year in a row now.
You also are in a position with the WNBA where there's been such a shakeup with certain stars going across the league. Obviously, Paige Becker's coming into the league is going to be huge. Second year of Caitlin Clark, second year of Angel Reese. Hopefully, a player like Cameron Brink does come back soon. She doesn't have a timetable at the moment, but that'll be interesting to see how she plays up. Rakia Jackson is, I'm a personal fan of her on the LA Sparks as a player that I think is going to have a strong sophomore year. We talked about the MVP race being probably one of the more interesting topics of the entire season because there's just so many players that could probably like vie for that top spot with the way their team situations are set up. I mean, basketball is kicking butt in every area right now, bro. It's kicking the butt in every. The NBA draft combine is in full effect right now. We've seen some interesting draft prospects play themselves up the board. A couple play themselves down the board.
Shout out to Johnny Brown and his 24-inch.
Hey man, you know what I mean?
I'm playing.
It's a couple of different situations where I think we could really see a lot of interesting storylines over the next couple of months. Whereas the NBA with the NBA Finals, the NBA Draft with obviously all of the crazy foolishness around what we just saw with the lottery last week. Then you pair that with what's going on with the WNBA. Man, if you're not locked into podcasts like these, you're just not tapped into basketball. I don't know what else to tell you.
We're good, and if you want to be locked in, you're gonna want to lock in with the Hit Your Free Throws podcast again. We're still gonna talk obviously the NBA Finals, Conference Finals, and all that, but we're gonna, of course, with the WNBA season kicking off, we're gonna be talking a lot about that as the season goes on, and you're gonna be able to catch all of that information. And all of those links can be found in the description down below. Make sure you lock in with the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. It's gonna be it's been a great year of basketball, and we're gonna continue to hopefully continue this throughout the summer. But yeah, thank you all for your support. Continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast through all our links down below. Jay and I will be back next week for another episode going into the deep dives of the conference finals, more WNBA topics as well. And yeah, hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.